We're just taking an overview of each one of those books. And in each one of those books, we're kind of telling what the theme is of the book, maybe touching on some stories of the book, but what it is that God is showing himself to be in the midst of it. In these first 5 books, he sets up himself and us, actually. He sets up mankind as a race desperately in need of a priest. Like I and you and we desperately need someone to stand between God and between man. An arbiter, an officiator, a negotiator, a priest. And throughout each one of these books, there's this constant little whispering of a hope of there coming someday this one who will stand between God and man. In Genesis, we also saw essences of God. We saw that God is a provider when he tells Abraham, I will provide myself a sacrifice. We see in Exodus that God sets up himself and he says, I am a God of peace. A God who's drawing you to me. And his essence that we see in that is fire, both consuming and non-consuming fire. And then this morning, we're going to be looking at God as holy. Now, this week, I've had a couple different people ask me, hey, what are you preaching on Sunday? And I'll say Leviticus, and they'll be like, yeah, but like, what's your theme? And I don't know if like people are becoming untrusting of me and don't know if I actually think about what I'm preaching before I start preaching or what, but I got this a lot this week. What are you preaching about? And I would say holiness, and I would get a whole bunch of different responses. I got, are you kidding me? And I was like, no. I had one guy say, you know what, that's what this world needs, more holiness and more hymns. I had people from all different responses on the word holy. I have that response. Like when I hear holy, like I don't quite understand it. Like I'm perfectly content to sing holy, 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 and I love those parts of holiness, but when the Bible says be holy as I am holy, my mind immediately goes to 5th or 6th grade at some camp out in the woods where there's a guy who's speaking and he's jumping across the pews and he's yelling at everybody, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And that's usually my idea of holy. If you go to look up the definition of holy, you're going to get all kinds of different things. Separate, that's one definition of holy. Complete, that's another definition of holy. Whole, which I would feel like they would just be spelled with a W if that's what it was, but anyway. Whole, perfect, sinless, religious, moral. So I take those definitions and I read in here and God says, be holy as I am holy. So I start trying to create this idea of what it means to be complete, what it means to be sinless, what it means to be pure, what it means to be called out, what it means to be perfect, all these different things. And it's really, really, really difficult for me to look at that and even think that there's an opportunity or chance for it to happen. Then I did something that I probably should always do. If you know anything about the Bible, if you've gone to any class on how to study the Bible, if anyone's ever talked to you about reading anything, ever, they say, take it in context. So I was like, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should just read it for how it sounds in there and not just rip this verse out of where it is in the Bible and then in a very weird spot. God's telling the nation of Israel all these things. He's taken them out of captivity. He's led them to this place. He's given them all these different rules. And in the beginning of Leviticus, he starts telling them like how they should shave, how they should do this, how they should get their priests ready to be priests. And then in chapter 11, he switches everything up. And he says, hey, don't eat animals that swarm together. Now, something we have to understand before I get further into this. This is a culture and a time in human history where civilization was just sort of beginning and climbing out. We didn't have a lot of health understandings. Like there was all these weird things that people thought. Malaria was caused by somebody capturing your footprint when you were walking out in the desert and then spitting on it and casting a disease. That's what people believed malaria, rather than it came from mosquitoes. Like men kept animals alive. They would take a sheep or a cow or something like that. This is disgusting, so I apologize. They would cut a piece of meat out of it, then they would pack it with mud or clay or whatever, and they would attempt to keep this animal alive because there was no refrigeration. So they would keep this animal alive sitting out there, and they would just go and harvest little pieces of meat off of it. And then God shows up, and he calls his people separately, and he tells them, I don't want you, like, you've got to drain, like, you got to kill it and drain all the blood out of it. You can't do that. And in this passage, he starts laying out these things. Don't eat things that are swarming. If a gecko falls into your water pot and dies, don't drink the water. And then he tells them, in fact, just dump it out and smash the pot and use a new pot next time. He tells men, if you're going to shave your beard, and he tells them a way to shave it so that they don't get ingrown hairs. Like, he's going through and he's just listing all of these health things. And then he says, so you know what? I called you out of Egypt, so be holy just as I am holy. And then he follows it up with saying, and again, verse 44, I think he says, consecrate yourselves therefore and be holy, for I am holy. And you shall not make yourselves unclean with any of the swarming things that swarm the earth. And then he says it again, for I, the Lord your God, have called you out of Egypt. So be holy just as I am holy. So then I'm thinking, this doesn't like fit with my idea of holiness. Like, my idea of holiness is that pious church lady who comes and sits in the front pew. I'm not talking about you right now, Sonia. Who comes and sits in the front pew and prays and reads her Bible every day, and you know and believe that she's praying for you when she says, I'm going to pray for you. That's not what this sounds like in the midst of taken in context. So I started looking into holiness even more. The word holiness comes from Saxony, Middle English, French, Italian, German, and it's a word called heilig, which literally means health. So when God is talking to us about being holy, like, it's weird for me to think about that he could be talking about be healthy. Like, how would that relate to Christianity? Be healthy. I had I'm not going to tell you who. We had some visitors come in, and they came here to Bangor, and they refused pretty much to drink the water out of our tap because they just assumed, that the water here would be disgusting and polluted and all of this kind of stuff. So they're like, I'm not drinking it. So they were buying bottled water and drinking bottled water the entire time they were here. Well, about, I don't know, like last week or something, I picked up a bottle of Deer Park water, which is what they were drinking the entire time they were here. Do you know where Deer Park water's bottled at? Bangor. Isn't that funny? Like, oh, I don't want to drink the Bangor water because it's got to be bad. I'm going to drink this super clean, perfect, pure Deer Park water. But on the back it says, bottled from the source. East Stroudsburg, New Tripoli, Bangor, PA. Bottled from the source. If we look at anything in life, any aspect, food, water, air, the closer you get back to the source, the more pure and the more healthy it is. The further something is from the source, the more opportunity there is for it to get polluted and clouded, dirty, filthy, sickening, disease-ridden. So when God is saying, be holy, just as I am holy, he's asking us to remain or draw near to the source. When he created mankind, what did he say? It's good. And then we know what happens. Then we know that Adam and Eve sin, and they fall away, and the root word of sin is sinicus morbicus, which literally means deadly disease, and this deadly disease sets in, and it runs rampant in mankind. And we see the outworkings and the end result of unchecked sin. But he is telling people, draw near to the source. Be holy just as I am holy. He is the source. He is the perfection, the cleanliness, the healthfulness for mind, body, and soul. That's why he says to love your Lord your God with your mind, your heart, and your soul. So draw near to the source. So how do we do it? Well, he talks about it here. For I am Jehovah who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God. Thus, be holy, just as I am holy. I am the Lord Jehovah who brought you up out of Egypt. Egypt was Israel's captivity. Now, for you and I, you can place whatever it is that you need to as Egypt. You can place your pride. You can place your anger. You can place your addictions. You can place drunkenness. You can place covetousness, selfishness, wrath, bitterness, unforgiveness, unkindness, lying. Whatever it is that you need to stick there as Egypt, that place of slavery and of entrapment, that place that they were not allowed to be free and live a free life, which is what Jesus brings us. Whatever that is in your life, God is saying the exact same thing to you. I am the Lord your God, and I brought you, Jonathan, up out of bitterness. I brought you out of drunkenness. I brought you out of addictions. I brought you out of hatred, out of a life full of lies. So I want you to be healthy. I mean, I conquered all of that. I did it all. I paid the price for all of it. And all of the junk that's happened in between there, and no matter how far down you have fallen, I've drawn you and pulled you out. I've broken all the bonds and all the chains. I've led you across wherever you needed to go, and I've set you up here. So be healthy. Return to the source. And just like everything in life, the easiest thing to do is the easiest thing not to do. God calls us over and over and over and over again to abide in him. Do you know the only action in abiding in God is to not abide in God? Like he sets us in a place that is so easy that all we have to do is remain. Yet, if you're like me, so many things can call from so many areas of life that draw my attentions and my affections away. And instead of abiding or sitting near the source, I chase after whatever. My affections have become so cheap that anyone can win them over. Anything. Yet he has conquered them all. Israel, when they come out of this entrapment that he has broken all the chains and all of that, and they begin and they set off in this wilderness, they're going to have tons of problems in the wilderness. And I don't know how much we'll get into each one of them, or if we will at all. But they're wandering through and all of this junk starts happening to them. They almost starve to death and they freak out. They almost die of dehydration and they freak out. Little roving bands attack them, they freak out. Moses goes up on a mountain for 40 days because they were too afraid to go up there and they freak out. They show up and there's this big giant body of water that they have to cross and they don't know how they're going to cross it and they freak out. They see Pharaoh, who they just escaped for, who God just did all of these crazy, incredible miracles in front of, and they see them coming up behind them in this cloud of dust, and what do? They freak out. And every time they start saying these stupid things, we can say they're stupid because we're looking in hindsight, but I see it all the time in my life. They'd say these stupid things like, you know what? Let's just go back. Because if we could just go back and offer ourselves as slaves again to where we were, they'll take us back, and life was so much easier there. And there's probably people in here right now, in this moment, that are face to face with that. We could use the word temptation, whatever word you want to stick in there. But it's there, and it's alive, and it's right in front of us. And like God does so many times throughout the Bible, and I'm not trying to make a doctrinal statement here, but he just does this over and over and over in the Bible. He sets men and women up to choose. Choose to be holy. Choose life. Choose this day whom you will serve. And he places it right there, and he gives us this opportunity. And so we're standing in the midst of maybe turmoil, maybe chaos, maybe life is actually really good, which sometimes is the scariest point in life, because we're not even looking or thinking about what could lead us astray. And all of a sudden, instead of abiding in him, we become confident in who we are. And we walk away. And usually when we walk away, we walk back towards where we came. God had set Israel free. And he's reminding them of this right here. And he says, I want you to be healthy. I've given you all these rules and all these laws and all these ways to live. Because you're my pattern for the rest of humanity. I want you to be a nation of priests, a pattern for humanity to live by. And so I've set up all these rules and all these laws and all these things where if you just follow them, you'll be healthy. And you can see that today. If you go in any bookstore, there's all these, the Bible diet, the Old Testament diet, the Leviticus diet. They have all these different kinds of diets because people are like, man, maybe if we ate like God told us to eat, we would be healthier. So there's all of these things. And God's giving them this pattern and this plan. And then he says, but listen, I want you healthy. I want you whole. I want you complete. Because I am. So what does that mean for me and you? Dave asked this question this morning. And he said, I wonder how many people that come here, that show up on Sunday mornings, know why. And he wasn't just asking it about you guys, he's asking about me. Why? What is the purpose to Christianity? What is the purpose to following after Christ? What is the purpose when he's saying, be healthy as I'm healthy? It is to get each and every one of us to a place of completeness, of wholeness, to be healthy in mind, body, and spirit. So that as we walk in this world, we're shouting from the mountains and from the rooftops that he is God. That we have finally peace with God. And that we can live that out. And in living it out, we draw others into that exact same pattern, an exact same place. A place of finding their King, of finding their Savior. I have one more thing to say about this passage. And it relates to the part where he says, for I am the Lord who brought you up from the land of Egypt to be your God, thus. It has to do with that word, thus. That's not a word we use very much anymore. In fact, I'm not even reading out of a King James Bible. But there's not a good translation for the word, thus. It's this forceful, yet optional word. You got to do it. You actually have a choice in it, but you have to do it. You don't have to do it, but you've got to do it. I'm not going to make you do it, but you got to do it. And this is exactly what God is saying right here. He's saying, I'm not going to make you do it, but you got to do it. Like there's no other option for you. I rescued you. When disaster strikes, when your life falls into chaos, when you've wandered far, far away, when the waters and problems of life rise, I'll never let you go. I rescued you. I reached down and grabbed hold of you, and even when your strength was giving out, I held on. When you couldn't see a way, I provided a way. I became the way. When hope was lost, when hope just gets up and takes flight and runs away, I never let go. When you plunge yourself into things that you thought would satisfy, and not only did they not satisfy, but they're beginning to ruin your life, poison your mind, darken your heart, steal your health, I still never let go. And not only did I not let go, but I pulled you out of it. And I set you up on a new and firm foundation next to the source. And I washed away all of the sin, all of the chains, all of the brokenness and weakness. Therefore, be healthy, be whole, be pure. For I, your God, am healthy, whole, and pure. And I will never let go. Let's stand and sing.